my Toronto. VK on the beat. Check. I'm in Toronto where you wanna get the city love. I'm from Toronto where you wanna get the city love. I'm in Toronto like we wanna get the city love. My city love me back for my city love. I'm in Toronto.
Welcome to episode 1647 of Toronto Mic'd. Proudly brought to you by Great Lakes Brewery, a fiercely independent craft brewery who believes in supporting communities, good times, and brewing amazing beer. Order online for free local home delivery in the GTA. Palma Pasta. Enjoy the taste of fresh, homemade Italian pasta and entrees from Palma Pasta in Mississauga and Oakville. RecycleMyElectronics.ca. Committing to our planet's future means properly recycling our electronics of the past. Building Toronto Skyline, a podcast and book from Nick Ienes, sponsored by Fusion Corp Construction Management, Inc. And Ridley Funeral Home, pillars of the community since 1921. Joining me today, returning to Toronto Mic'd, it's Bruce Dowbiggin. There's your big intro, Bruce. How you doing, buddy?
I'm good, man. How are you?
Good to see you. How long you in town for?
Here for the week. Just coming back from a stay in Florida. And, we're going to hang out a little bit and see some people. And my kids are here in town. And two of my kids are here in town. And as a result, by the way, because you always give me stuff, I walk away with stuff.
You're getting more stuff today, Bruce. I'm good to you.
I know. And you have new sponsors, too, since the last time I was here.
Probably. Nick Ienes has jumped on board. Absolutely.
Repeat them. So, yeah.
Yeah, we got Fusion Corp. Actually, I should show you here.
I see their sign, yeah.
So Fusion Corp, this gentleman, Nick Ienes, wants to fuel the real talk. He's got a podcast called Building Toronto Skyline.
Cool.
Battle of the Skyscrapers, Building Toronto Skylines. These are Nick Ienes' books. His last episode was the guy from, Pinnacle International, who are building a skyscraper at One Yonge.
Yep. And
this thing, I took notes on this because it blew my mind, but when this is completed, it's they're working on it right now, it's going to be 105 stories.
Whoa.
That's 345 meters. It'll be the largest skyscraper in the country. Would you want to live in the penthouse of a 105-story condo tower, Bruce?
Probably by the time you got up there, it would be time to come back down to go to work again. That's
Seriously.
the old Toronto Star building?
Yes. It's that footprint there. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's a whole complex going up. I'm not sure it's that exact footprint, but I think they've already made some progress on this one, and I think the One Yonge is still standing there. But yeah, One Yonge Street.
I have to go see. I'm going to St. Lawrence Market on Saturday, so I'll go and look at it.
Go check it out. I love it. My, Friday, Andy Wilson brought me a mug, and he brought me a sweater, and I'm like, gifts should come to me when guests come over. So, Bruce, what did you bring me, buddy?
Well, what did I bring you? I don't even know if you like tea. Do you like tea?
I do drink. I drink more coffee than tea, but absolutely I'll enjoy a cup of tea.
Mint tea. Anyhow, my son who does my book, who did the co-author of my last two books, Evan,
yeah, of course,
who did Deal With It, the trades that stunned the NHL and shook up hockey. His father-in-law is in the tea business, and they make fat. Well, he's more of a wholesaler, etc. You don't necessarily see his teas on the shelf, but if you go to the Fairmont chain, if you go to the Disney chain, if you go to all sorts of hotels and high-end things, the Empress Hotel in Victoria, if you ever gone,
I've been there.
If you go for that's their tea. So I brought you some mint tea. And the box is kind of sexy, too.
Sexy, a sexy AF box, as the kids would say. And thank you so much.
Yeah.
I'm gonna enjoy this tea, and thank your son for me.
Later in the day, that's when I like tea, like after supper, before bed or whatever. A little bit of peppermint
Taking notes over here. Okay.
Clears the palate.
Lot 35.
Yeah.
All right, very good. Thank you so much.
They've got all sorts of stuff. Every kind of tea, English, Irish, you name it, matcha tea, etc. They're really quite good, and it's a fun guy to talk to.
Well, I'll give you some cold tea, as we call it. I have fresh craft beer for you from Great Lakes Brewery, so you can share that with your son, or you can keep it all to yourself, Bruce. But you're taking some GLB home with you.
I look forward to it. I always forget when I come here to your show. The thing I always forget to do right off the start is get a glass of water.
Oh, it's all right out here.
Halfway through the show, I'm dehydrated, and I don't want to interrupt the flow of the show. So
well, I'm going to run up and get you water, but I'm going to be listening while I want you to explain to us these headphones you have here. Just tell me about these headphones. I'll be listening. I'll be back in like 30 seconds.
These are T-bone headphones, and you're a cyclist. Mm-hmm. And what's the most important thing when you're cycling and you have headphones on is you can't hear ambient noise. Your ears are blocked by the buds or the whatever the cone over your ears. And also, if you're a swimmer like I am, you can't take those into a pool. And I've been looking for years for a solution to that. And what I've found these are called T-bones. There's other ones like them that you can find. And the secret to them is, and you can wear them when you're swimming, you can wear them when you're cycling. The secret to these is that the buds rest on your cheekbones instead of in your ears. The sound literally goes through the bones in your ear canal, and you hear that, but you can also hear all sorts of other stuff going on. So when you're riding along, and I know this happens, you don't always hear people perfectly, or cars, whatever it is, because you've got your headphones on, you're listening to some great musician you've had on your show.
Absolutely.
These things allow you to do both. And they're great for an airplane because, on the airplane they tell you, take off your earphones so we can tell you the thing we've told you 1,000 times. You don't have to because your ears are open. So anyhow, I highly recommend them. They're
safer for a cyclist like me.
$50 or $60. They do Bluetooth. The MP3 in this holds, I think right now I have about 3,000 songs in this. So you can see how small it is. Okay. So high recommendation for you as a cyclist to keep you safe, keep your brain bucket safe. Get a set of them.
And that's key. No, it's great. So already, look, right off the top, I know what tea I need to be drinking. Now I know what headphones I'm supposed to be wearing. Love it so much. When I put on Blue Sky, I know you're not on Blue Sky, right? You're an X-man.
I do a Facebook. I do LinkedIn. I do all sorts of other WhatsApp. I haven't done Blue Sky yet. I'll get to there.
Brad Wheeler saw you were coming on. Brad Wheeler from the Globe and Mail wrote, should be a laugh riot. So I don't know if Brad's being, I think there's some sarcasm in there, but
maybe.
So I told him variety is the spice of life is what I replied to him. Cowboys Canuck, when he heard Bruce Dowbiggin was coming by again, because you've been over several times. This is not your first rodeo here. I said rodeo because you're from Calgary here. We'll talk about that. But Cowboys Canuck, Cowboys too. Look at that. Bruce Dowbiggin. Were there no crackpot conspiracy theorists available? No other crackpot conspiracy theorists available. So this is I'm curious, are you aware that the Bruce Dowbiggin brand has a little of that attached to it now?
Well, we talk about it. We talk about it because if you're
talk about it now.
If you're not part of the solution, you're the part of the problem. Isn't that what they always say? My line, I've used this on your show, other shows before, is I don't really think I've changed all that much. I think a lot of people who are in the same realm politically as I was a quarter century ago have moved further left, and I just haven't moved with them. And that as a result, I get branded as some sort of fire-breathing Western petro monster.
Well, this guy's branding you. This guy, Cowboys Canuck, probably not his real name. Like I'd have to see the driver's license there. But do you think you have any crackpot conspiracy theories that you believe in?
I think that everything will end up well in the end. I think that's a crackpot theory. I think that given proper time, people can work things out. That's a crackpot theory. I don't know. When you get, I'll be 71 in 2 weeks, so I've seen a few things under the bridge.
Sure.
And it tends to lead to some cynicism, but I'd still try to be positive and still try to see. This is a very exciting time to be living. Whether you're in
That's
Europe,
one word for it, right?
Yeah, whether
it's exciting.
But you know what? It's the dynamics of society. People are looking at them and they're changing them. And Trump ran. He got his majority. He got the Congress and stuff in the States. So you have to say, well, the Americans asked for it. And here in Canada, we're about to answer that question again. Hopefully, we'll have an election fairly soon because I think one's necessary. And then we will see what the voice of the people is and which way we should go.
Mike from K-Dub wants to know: Bruce Dowbiggin, do you plan to buy a Cybertruck?
I hate them. They're ugly. They're ugly. I mean, I listen, if somebody wants to, there's a lot of, I just came back, as I say, from about 3 weeks in Florida, and there's a lot of cyber trucks down there. It seems to be a cool thing. And I think it's a cool thing for people who have tons of money and it's a toy. It's like the 10th thing in their garage.
But serious question, Bruce. I love it when you come over because there's somebody who maybe has different thoughts on things and I can get a new perspective. I need to know what Alberta is thinking. You come and tell me what Alberta is thinking. But do you think a little bit is, or a lot of it maybe is that, people like Toronto Mike fucking hate the Cybertruck. I'm going to piss them off by driving one. Like, is there any of that going
that you
on?
would drive?
Yeah, like people like me. Like, so that, there's people like who's this? Mike from K-Dub.
Right.
People like that get I told my 10-year-old who's upstairs, because it's March break, I told him he has my permission. He can take a leak on a Cybertruck if he finds one in the wild. Like, it's fine. What are the cops going to do to a 10-year-old? I said, that's fine with me. You have my permission or whatever. Like, the fact that we would get riled up over seeing a car, that might cause somebody like these people you saw in Florida to buy one and drive it around and be like, screw you guys.
Well, I think for a lot of people, it's the big dick syndrome. I think it's, I can do it and I'm going to do it. And I don't care what anyone thinks.
Right.
I think that's a large part of it. It's amazing. In fact, the other day, I should tell you, we were outside. It was about supper time, and just dark before daylight savings time, and we saw this amazing sight going, because we see the rockets coming out of Cape Canaveral where we are, and just about 7 o'clock, all of a sudden, the one that was going exploded.
Right.
And it looked like a meteor shower.
Right.
It's spectacular when they go up properly, but it's also spectacular when they explode.
As long as it doesn't land on anybody.
Well, I think it dispersed over the ocean, but it had come from Texas, so there was a lot of time for it to blow up and land on people. But I think Musk is a fascinating character. He's like, what's that guy Tucker who invented the car, and they basically
Tucker, the man in his dreams.
Yeah, and they ran him out of business. I think there's a lot of that I admire in people, that they're willing to try stuff and do stuff. The idea that a year ago, you and I sitting here talking as we did, the idea that Trump would run with him and with RFK Jr. as his running mates. He reached over here and slapped me and said, "Wake up, son." Well,
no, you used the word exciting, and that's an appropriate term in that there's lots happening all over the place. And when I saw on my calendar, you're scheduled to visit because you're in town.
Yeah.
And we planned for maybe the third time in a row, and maybe we will. Like, maybe we'll get to it. But I'm the boss around here, Bruce. So I'll decide where we get to it. But we were going to talk about Alan Eagleson and your role and all that, and I think we will get to it today. But I have to admit, right off the top, I'm like, I need to talk to Bruce about all the stuff that's happening. Like, Elon Musk almost ranks, 9th or 10th. And that typically, I think in a typical news cycle, might be closer to number one. What's going on him with Doge? Is that how you pronounce it?
Yeah, Department of Government Efficiency.
Right. Not the Bitcoin with the dog on it or whatever I used to see on Reddit, but probably not a coincidence
You have to admit the video of them bringing the spacecraft back and the arm grabbing it and bringing it back. That's pretty amazing stuff.
Yeah. My concern is when I see footage, and I'm kind of aching to hear how you're going to spin this one, but I see him giving the Hail Hitler salute. Are you going to tell me that he was just waving goodbye to his followers?
He was waving goodbye to the one that exploded, you mean?
No, this is right after the election.
Really?
Right after the inauguration.
You got into the whole Heil Hitler sign? I mean, you haven't seen the 846
you don't
examples
think that's
of other
significant?
people?
You don't think that's
He wasn't doing Heil Hitler. He was waving to people.
Oh, my God. I watched it 100 times. I don't believe
After the show is over, I'll go home and I will send you a thing of left-wing politicians doing the salute.
Okay, you do the salute right now, since it's just waving hello. Right now on that camera, Bruce Dowbiggin. Let's hear you do the...
I hit my knuckles on the
Well, lower
ceiling.
your seat. You know what? I bet you wouldn't do it. You know why? Because you know what that is, okay? And you wouldn't do that. Okay, so...
Really? Do you think he's a Nazi?
I think so. I think he's...
Okay.
Yeah, I think so. But,
I can't argue.
I wish I could get him on the show and I'd have a deeper convo with him. But if I get him in the basement, we'll try to drill in.
14 kids. He's good at something.
Well, you know what? If you could, he can afford them. I think if I had unlimited funds, I might have 14 kids. Right? Kids are amazing.
I'd have had more.
Yeah, I think I stopped at 4 because I couldn't afford a 5th. Like I didn't have Musk money.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I was one of 5 growing up, and we have 3, and I'd have been happy to have more, but it's not, the burden of doing all that didn't fall on me. I just sort of, made the executive decision. My wife would have had to do all the work. Oh. And so at that point, I gave her the thumbs up or thumbs down. So.
Yeah, at some point, I closed up the shop. I said, I don't want to be talked into this again. So, okay. So let's set the table here by letting the listenership know, if they haven't heard a Bruce Dowbiggin episode, you live in Calgary, Alberta.
Have since 25 years now.
And despite what Antonia Zerbesius, who was on my show, and I told her you were coming
Antonia.
in. You know what? Did you listen to her episode of Toronto Mike by any chance?
I just saw the little clip that was being previewed, but I don't like to watch too much of one before I come on your show, because then I start, like the Alan Gregg thing. We could talk for the whole about Alan Gregg stories.
Well, I'd be interested in the Alan Gregg talk. He's coming on again because he doesn't live in Canada, so we have to wait for him to
Mexico, eh?
Right.
Yeah.
But he is going to come in the basement. But he's going to be here with Jake Gold, and it's going to be the first time. Story. Yeah, the first time that they've been interviewed together since Venture in like the late 80s.
Yeah, yeah.
And Venture, by the way, Antonia worked on Venture.
So for me, here we're going to digress, and
let's digress, and then I'll get to all my questions.
I met Alan through Peter Mansbridge when we were working together at CBC. I was on the phone one day. Bob Weeks, who you know from TSN,
of course, he's an FOTM. He's been in the base. Yeah, he's been here.
He called me one day in the makeup room and said, "You're looking to join a golf club?" I said, "Yeah, I might be." He said, "Well, Weston has a certain price, and would you like to join?" I said, "Yeah, absolutely." Peter was sitting in the makeup room at the same time. I said, "Oh, I'm looking to join a club with a couple of my buddies." And I said, "Why don't we go and try the course out together?" So Peter, Alan Gregg, Bob Lewis, who was the editor of Maclean's at the time, and I guess I was the 4th. We went and we tried out the course, and we all became members, and we were kind of a regular Saturday group there. And Alan's the only person in the entire universe who saw my hole-in-one. The only hole-in-one I've had in my life.
Wow. We need to get him to put it on the record here so it will be preserved for your grandchildren.
Alan and I, we looked for 5 minutes for the ball, and then all of a sudden he looked at the hole and said, "Oh, it's in the hole." So anyhow, I became friends with Alan that way. He's one of the most generous, bright, I've got nothing but superlatives for him. I didn't find him an affected guy. He could have, been bigfooting me as the sports guy. He never did. And when I was making the decision whether to go to Calgary or not, and I knew Alan had grown up in Edmonton, I was talking to him, and I said, I'm not sure. He said, "Listen, if there's anywhere I would live in Canada other than Toronto today," he said, "it would be Calgary." And his say-so was really so important to me at the time. I said, "Well, let's give it a try." And that was a big part of why I made the decision.
It sounds like Alan makes a lot of contacts on the golf course, only because he was directed to me by a FOTM named Jesse Hirsch.
Yeah, and Jesse played with us.
Okay, because Jesse knows him because they would golf together.
And now they're doing a podcast.
Yes. Okay, they invited me to the podcast. I actually don't think I'm smart enough to be on their podcast. Like this is, here we are, C students or whatever. I feel like that's for the new gifted program is their podcast.
But, we used to have people show up if somebody wasn't there. Like one day the Governor General showed up, Raina Tishon showed up to play. And I'm just a little schmuck guy, sportscaster guy. And I just had a window into this. It was a lot of fun. And as I say, they could have been really, Bigfoot me, let's drag him along. Right. When my kids would come and caddy, they were patient with the kids. The kids would wander off and stuff. And it was never a problem. And Alan, when I first knew him, as I think he explained on your show, was going through a tough time. His first wife had passed away. The business stuff, which you were cataloging with him too, was, he was having some trouble with it.
Right.
And he was always upbeat and positive and bright. And I was on his show a number of times. Every time I had a book, I would come on his show. So I nothing but praise for the man. And I'm glad that you made the connection. The show, I listened to it beginning to end.
And it kind of connects to your dear friend, Steve Paikin.
Yeah.
Because Greg talks about losing the TVO show.
Yeah.
And it sounds like there might have been, I'm
having lunch with Steve on Wednesday. I will bring that up.
Tell Steve we're due for a catch-up.
Yeah.
And I actually wonder if he's a little ticked at me. I wonder. I'll share this live on the public, because he did an episode of The Agenda that was promoted as, what would it look like if Canada were the 51st state?
Right.
I'm paraphrasing mildly, like when I show you the title and the screen caps of the promotional materials that floated around social media and stuff that were put out by TVO's marketing department or whatever, you'll see it's almost that. It was like, and people like Kathleen Wynne were on this panel, and they were doing an episode where they discussed, and sure, in the discussions, it would be resolved that Canada would never be the 51st state or whatever. Not willingly, at least.
No, it won't
Right,
be.
and we'll get into that a bit more too. But I didn't like the premise of the framing of it. What would it look like if Canada? Because to me, it was sane washing this idea that Trump keeps pushing.
Making it acceptable.
Yeah, like I don't mind. Same with Ian Hanno-Mansing, who listens to the program. So hello to Ian.
Hey, Hanno.
Hello to Ian,
Another wonderful
handsome
person.
man thing, I think is.
Yes,
yeah.
that's what we
Who,
used
by
to-
the way, buddies, one time he's like, I'm coming to Toronto. I don't have time to come to the basement. I'm actually meeting Steve's brother, Steve Pakin's brother. Like, this all connects.
Yeah.
It all connects. But
Hanno's a wonderful guy, and they always wanted him to move to Toronto to be the next guy.
I bet.
But his wife had a great job in Vancouver, and his kids were growing up, and God bless him, he said, you know what? Here I stay.
So Ian eventually will be in this basement, but we correspond via email, etc. So these two things were happening. First, the agenda, and then much later, cross-country Canada checkup. Right. Which is now
Always
hosted
sounds like a dental appointment, doesn't it? Yeah.
It's no longer the Rex Murphys, though. It's now it's Ian Hanno-Mansing. Rex Murphy. Shout out to Ridley Funeral Home, no longer with us. But here, let me wrap this up real quick to say they also similarly framed an episode of Cross Canada Checkup in normalizing this 51st state. Like, let's talk to our friends in America. Let's talk about what it would look like if Canada joined the United States as the 51st state. And I was personally offended by the framing by CBC and TVO, two public broadcasters. And I let Steve, I went on the public record about it. And I don't know if Steve is a little ticked at me for going at him because I actually am still pissed off at how the agenda framed that episode. What would it look like if Canada became the 51st state?
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean I don't want to talk about it. We should talk about it. We should fill your boots. We should talk about this illegal threat by the United States and Donald Trump, but we shouldn't frame it as this possibility that one day we'll have a referendum and we'll decide that, yes, United States, we'd like to be a part of you and use your money, etc. Like, that is, to me, gross.
Well, I think there's a discussion that can be had about a hemispheric zone, including Mexico and Canada and the United States in a free trade zone. I think that's
like
a discussion.
NAFTA?
But NAFTA just governs the agreements that we have. Talking about a free trade zone amongst this hemisphere and basically protecting ourselves and indulging ourselves and taking care of ourselves. I think that's
very different, right?
That's a legitimate argument.
That's a conversation to have.
Yeah, and I think that Trump, this is his bumbling way of not bumbling isn't the word. It's his bumptious way of getting in this kind of discussion started. So, yeah.
Hell of a statesman. Okay, yeah, that's one way to do it. Just piss us off so royally that you got Canadians pissed off. That's not easy to do, is it?
Yeah. Well, I can see where you're coming from. That listen, they had a show to do. They had to frame it.
I'm sure
Clearly, they got your attention to watch it.
Right. If the goal was to get eyeballs and clicks and that kind of attention, then sure. It's like yelling fire in a crowded theater or something, right? Like, it's going to work. But I feel the public broadcaster has the responsibility not to sane wash this notion.
The public broadcaster
this isn't
has
CTV and global. This is TVO and CBC, where taxpayers fund these, partially fund at least these programs.
The CBC, the public broadcaster, has the obligation to be honest and to report the facts and to bring them out and to not editorialize about whether they think it would be a good idea or a bad idea, but to interview people on both sides and let the audience make up their mind. And I think that's their obligation, and that should be TVO's obligation too. I didn't watch the show, so I can't speak to the specifics of it. It's kind of like a university debate. And one of the great things about a debating society when you're doing it is they assign you the position that you're going to argue. So you learn how to see the best things about the other side. And it also teaches you to be, open-minded when you get into debate. And so I suppose to a certain extent, I don't want to go down this line too far because I didn't see the show.
But we're not even talking about the content of the show.
Right.
We're talking about the framing, the question, the promotion of what it would be about. To me, it's like, why not just do an episode of What would it look like if we took away women's right to vote? You know what I mean? Like, this is where we're at. Like, you know, we
Well, there's a good issue.
that might
I'll have to take that back to Alberta.
Alberta. Yeah. Okay, so this is where I was going.
Where we have a female premier.
Yes, you do have a female
and a
premier.
female opposition leader, or we used to.
So Danielle Smith. Okay, so we established off the top, you've been living a long time now in Alberta. I know I did that. Calgary, Alberta.
Because Edmonton and Calgary are very different places.
How are they? My wife's from Edmonton. But I've only been there once. How is Calgary different from Edmonton?
Well, Calgarians call it Redmonton. It's the home of the civil service. It's the home of the University of Alberta. It's a place where the NDP member who is wearing the keffiyeh in the House of Commons comes from Edmonton, and she's white Anglo-Saxon background according to her name. Anyhow, people tend to see Edmonton as being the more liberal of the two cities, and also Calgary is more of a corporate headquarters place. Edmonton is more a place where, as I say, unionized stuff. The people who work in the north, when they come down from Fort Mac, that's where they go for a weekend. They go to the West Edmonton Mall. I'm being very general about it, but generalizing. But they're different.
They're very different. Okay, is Calgary more like when sometimes we refer to Alberta as the Texas of Canada? We're talking about Calgary there more so than Edmonton.
No, when we're talking about Texas, we're talking about anything but Calgary and Edmonton. We're talking about rural.
The rest.
In the same way, if you're trying to describe Ontario, you take Toronto, the southern part of the metro area, out of it. It's a different province, as you just learned when you had your provincial election just ended. There's a lot of people out there who are not, liberal. Let's try something different kind of people. There's a lot of conservative people who are out there.
Okay, I'm going to quickly connect some dots to get us back to where I want to go. But one is, remind us, what show did you work with Fred Patterson from the Humble and Fred show on?
I didn't work. He was on a show that I was supposed to be on. It was a Sunday night sports show on CBC, CBLT, and he and what's his name that went over to CP. I've forgotten the guy's name. Anyhow, they ended up doing the show, and I was much put out by our people having outsiders employed in doing this show.
Okay, I got this story completely wrong. So you didn't work with Freddie P on a show. Freddie P basically was doing a show that you felt you should be doing.
Yeah, well, it was a CBLT show. I was the lead sports guy on the show. I thought that by rights it should have been my show, and so we were a little ticked about it for a while.
Okay.
But I don't hold that against Freddie. I mean, he had an opportunity. Gosh, I can't remember the other guy's name. And you'll remember his name when I tell you.
Okay, and he went to CP24, you said? No.
Who the other guy?
Yeah.
No, I think he went to Canadian Press, and he's anyhow, it's a guy who's probably been on your show, so
okay.
It'll come to me when
it comes to you.
Unfogs.
Spit it out here. So his partner at Humble and Fred is Humble Howard Glassman.
Yeah,
golfs like a fiend. Yeah. Like he golfs. Of course, we put you on the show. He golfs like crazy, Humble Howard. And one of Howard's things is because he's golfed more rounds than I'm sure you, Alan Gregg, Jesse Hirsch, and everybody combined, I would guess, because we have an addiction to golf, Humble Howard. But he's never had a hole-in-one. So hearing you earlier talk about the hole-in-one that Alan Gregg witnessed, I know Humble Howard, he's dying to get a hole-in-one, and he puts in there's a lot of rounds that man is golfing.
It's luck. If you're a good golfer and you throw the ball at the target enough times, it'll go in for you. If you're a hack like me, all the planets have to line up for that one day and it goes in. But it's a magic thing, and you can hold it over people who haven't got a hole in one.
And you have an eyewitness.
I have an eyewitness, and he's an unimpeachable guy. If I said it was, my caddy had seen it, you could say, well, he just paid him to say that.
Right. But I will say, when Alan Gregg is next on the show, when he comes on with Jake Gold, and there'll be a lot of hip talk in that episode, I will get him to put it on the record, record Alan Gregg stating he has, in fact, witnessed this hole-in-one by Bruce Dowbiggin, and then it'll live forever. So that's what I'll do for you there. So Alan Gregg, one of the great episodes of Toronto Mic'd of all time. If people haven't heard Alan Gregg from earlier this quarter, get on that. What a great episode. Another great episode, though, was Antonia Zerbisias. And when I told her that you were now leaning, now that you're in Alberta, you're in Calgary, you're leaning further right than maybe she is, she was shocked because she assumed you, as a CBCer living in Toronto, she assumed you were rather left of center, and I kind of blew her mind with that.
When I was younger. Well, when I was younger, but what I earlier said is that I think I'm kind of in the place I always was. I don't believe men can have babies. I have a lot of things that people right now pay lip service to as
people are saying men can have babies.
Yeah, sure, of course they are. Of course they are.
Where's this discourse happening? Like, I'm missing this, but where's the discourse that men can have babies?
Well, certainly not something that I believe in. I'm not promoting this idea. But if you look at the pronoun people, go up to York University and talk to people there. Go to U of T and talk to people there. Go into the government and talk to people there, because they're very solicitous of people who think that men can have babies. So
you're referring to trans men that have uterus, et cetera, et
cetera. And a number of other issues that I'm not quite as well. I still believe what I believed 25 years ago about a lot of things about financing and what a country is about, et cetera. And I think we've sort of lost sight of it. One of the most here I am. I'll segue on you. One of the most interesting things about this discussion that I've seen, two polls that I've seen that are really interesting. The man you hate with a passion, and that everyone.
Which one? You need to be more specific.
Well, there's only one person really to hate these days.
I've got multiple, but Trump
is Donald Trump. They just had a recent poll. 60% of Americans under the age of 40 support him. And then there was another poll in which, I guess in one of his many ramblings, he said, "Well, if people want to come to Canada, we'll offer them conditional citizenship, and we will give them an exchange dollar for dollar, U.S. dollars, etc." And there was a poll of kids, young people 18 to 36, and 42% of the people said that they would consider that offer. And I guess the point of what I'm saying, and I was making this with my host last night when we watched Mr. Carney's thing, is that we're all focused. Our age group has defined Canada. We're the group that thinks 72 hockey series, all of these kind of things are defining Canada, and they have been for a long time. But there's a generation that's following us right now, and I have my kids, and they give me an insight into it, who don't see Canada in the same way. They're not romantic about it in the same way that we were. The Prime Minister just resigned, said we're postmodern, that we don't have a culture anymore, that we're, a world visiting place. Come on in here. And I think a lot of people in Canada under a certain age don't see it in the same way. And those of us at the top end, the boomers, because of course we think the world revolves around us, we don't understand that they have moved on from us. And these discussions that we had about Carney, or even the ones in the United States where all the politicians seem to be 75 years old, they don't seem to be acknowledging what's coming next and what they believe and what they want to do. And I think that's part of the discussion that has to happen when we finally have this election, hopefully in the next month or two.
Mark Carney was absolutely next on my agenda here. So I'm setting the table. You're an Alberta guy. You have these thoughts. We've had a little taste there. And Antonia Zerbisias, also one of the great Toronto Mic'd episodes. It was just the most recent episode in the feed, and I thought she was pretty awesome to chat with. Enjoyed it very much. What are the thoughts from you, Bruce, on the new Liberal? And by the way, I had to get this explained to me.
He's an Albertan.
He's from Edmonton. Oh yeah, he was born in Northwest Territories, raised in Alberta. Yeah. Absolutely, he's from Alberta. What are your thoughts on Mark Carney, who will, and I don't know when this happens, I think Trudeau has to go to the Governor General and officially resign, and then Mark Carney becomes Prime Minister. So now he's leader of the Liberal Party, and he will be Prime Minister, what time is it? Any moment now. And what are your thoughts,
Is it happening
Bruce?
that soon?
I think it's going to happen this week. I think he's going to do it. I think he's going to do it.
Yeah,
early.
I mean, the people who are making a fuss about, he's unelected and all this sort of, listen,
and who's making that fuss? Someone who doesn't understand our system.
In Alberta, Danielle Smith was the premier elect for a considerable period of time before she finally got elected and got the title. So I'm not making a big thing about it. Mark Carney is a quintessential bureaucrat. He's a quintessential sees government as the way to solve problems. He's a banker, obviously, but he uses the economy through government to solve them. That's going to be his viewpoint. That's going to be his particular profile. The thing that struck me watching him last night was he did a gushing thank you to Justin Trudeau about his 10 years as Prime Minister of Canada, and then seemed to repudiate about 4 or 5 of the major planks of the Liberal government of the last 10 years on things like the carbon tax, etc.
Right.
And then he said he's a practical guy. And so I guess it begs the question, was the Liberal Party that we had as the last 10 years, was it a construct of Justin Trudeau, and when he goes, it's not going to be that stuff? Or is Mark Carney going to have to bring the Liberal Party to the water and make them drink in it? Those are the interesting things that I'm going to see in the next couple of weeks.
And in your opinion, Bruce, how much of that is simply disarming Pierre Poilievre's Conservative Party of Canada, like removing some of these talking points that we've been inundated with?
Well, they're the talking points of
Tax
Poilievre's.
the axe being one, right? Like I hear this tax the axe. I think most
Axe,
yeah, little dyslexia.
Actually,
there.
tax the axe
Tax
is even
the
better.
axe. Axe the tax. I bet you most Canadians aren't even sure what the hell that means.
Well, it's the carbon tax.
Sure.
The one to
So
get rid of.
how much is this strategic to simply disarm Pierre Pollievre?
Sure. A number of the things that the Liberal Party now stands for are things that the Conservatives found from their polling were effective assaults on the Liberal Party, and they're trying to defang the Liberal Party and the Conservatives. And I think it's worked well, and it's been very clever. I don't know who's done it, but they've basically pushed Pollievre into a corner where Pollievre is echoing most of the stuff that the Liberals and the New Democrats are saying about Trump. He's the stab in the back and all that sort of stuff, and whatever his feelings are on it, it just makes it sound like, oh, he just agrees with the Liberals, so why would we need a different guy? Pollievre is in a really, really interesting place right now. I wouldn't say approving, but I think he was doing what he should have been doing up until now, which is keeping his powder dry and let the Liberals burn themselves up. But now it's his turn to get on the dance floor, and we're going to see whether he can establish a persona, whether he can establish a platform that's significantly different from the Liberals. I think most people still are willing to admit that the Liberals probably need a timeout. They need to go back and revamp. I mean, the Prime Minister went on and on about how disappointing the United States was. You had a chance to elect a woman. Well, they couldn't even get 15% of the votes for women yesterday in the leadership thing. So I think the Liberals really need a timeout to rethink who they are. But they're in a hurry. They want to hang on to power, which is a political thing. And so that leaves it to Pollievre. We'll see what happens.
Now, you alluded to the fact that Mark Carney overwhelming, 86% of the vote or something, whatever.
Yep.
I didn't vote, so whoever is eligible to vote. But
a lot of people apparently didn't vote. They had 400,000 people register, and I think 130,000 or 135 approximately.
But do you think
voted.
that's possibly because it was such a foregone conclusion? Like, I admit, I thought it would be closer than.
Well, why would you register if it was a foregone conclusion? The people I've been talking to since I've been in town who registered said it was extremely complicated.
Okay.
If you weren't a sophisticated computer person for a lot of people, and the boomers and older people who are Liberal voters, a lot of them, I think they got scotched and said, I don't know how this works.
No, I get the calls from my mom, okay? These are very tricky maneuvers for your typical boomer person. All right, well, that would explain.
Did your mom vote?
No, I don't think. I this whole idea, what, do you register as a member of the Liberal Party? Like, explain it to me. Like,
I think I've registered in the past for both parties, and in the past I send $10, and they send me a card, and they send me all of the bump for a year, and then they say send us some more money, and I say that was a waste.
But I'm surprised you, Bruce, this journalist, would even do that step, because that might suggest some bias if you're registering as a member of the party.
The time I did for the Conservatives was. Oh, I'm an insider.
Yes.
Was the guy at my golf course who was our food and beverage manager, who asked me whether he should get into politics. I said, don't get into politics. You'll hate yourself, et cetera, et cetera. He went ahead anyhow, and he won our riding, and now he's in the government. So I said, I will for one time I will take a card and vote for you because you're a friend of mine. In spite of everything I told you, you ran.
Right. See that's a good reason. Okay.
And I did vote, and I did the.
But I've never. So I didn't vote. I didn't register with anything. I'll vote when we go to the polls as a country, which will happen. It sounds like it'll happen in the next couple of months.
Yeah, the people who come to my door politically to ask for my support, I tell them I'm a journalist and I cannot.
Yeah, that's what I would think. Position. I would think you wouldn't want to, Pagan. You can't get Pagan to show any kind of preference for any political party. No, he's actually. That's why he gets to moderate all the debates.
Sure. He's very scrupulous about it most of the time. I always say I can't talk to you, but here's my wife. You can try to sell my wife on something, and sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. So there you go.
Absolutely. So, do you partly where I was going was, so huge majority there in that election, whoever got to vote, Mark Carney won overwhelmingly. But that would be, Liberal Party members voting who is the best person to defeat Pierre Pollievre in the upcoming federal election. And in that case, so it's not because Mark Carney is a dude and Chrystia Freeland's a woman. Like there's not that. Although the Freeland logo, I saw it when she was speaking, looks a lot like the Fabric Land logo. Have you seen the Fabric Land? They have one in Dundas. Fabric Land. Fabric Land.
See, if I'm Freeland and in the situation, well, first of all, I got to be pissed because I spent 10 years taking all the shots for what Trudeau's done, whether I believed it or not. I was a good soldier for most of it. At the end, when I had a slight difference of opinion with the Prime Minister.
A good soldier until she wasn't. Right?
Well, yeah, according to the Prime Minister. So, but if I'm in her shoes, what I'm looking at is, okay, I know I'm not going to win this vote. And she got virtually none of the vote.
8%? I don't know. Something's low. But single digits.
But if the scenario is that Mark Carney runs and then Mark Carney loses, he ain't hanging around. He's not going to sit there on the opposition benches. He came here to be prime minister. And if he doesn't become prime minister, then the Liberals are going to be looking for someone else. And this is when Chrystia Freeland says, hey, how about me? I'm a woman. I was in the government. I did service, me, etc. And that she can run then for the leadership. I think that would be her scenario for what we saw coming out of this.
Okay, so Mark Carney has to become prime minister. As we speak, he's not officially prime minister, although it is imminent. And then I'm sure you're right. You mentioned it earlier that an election would be called rather quickly.
Late April, maybe?
Yeah. Do you want anything in that crystal ball? And then I can pull the clip and tell you were way wrong, Bruce, or maybe you nailed it. But what do you think happens federally, Pierre Pollievre versus Mark Carney?
My favorite political story, I think Alan Gregg may have mentioned this to you as well on his show. But anyhow, my favorite political story is, of course, Harold Macmillan was the Prime Minister of Britain. And he was doing a scrum with the reporters at the time. And one of them said, Mr. Prime Minister, what do you fear most? And he said, events, dear boy, events. And what I would say in response to your question, asking me what's going on, is that anything that's more than 2 weeks out in this cycle,
2 days out.
Yeah, you're just assuming things. Again, I have no idea how the dynamics will happen. Here's my big prediction.
Yeah.
Do you have a drum roll or something? Is it one of those cheesy shows where the guys do the?
Hold on, do I? Hold on. Let's see what this is. I don't know. That's a rim. No, I don't have a drum roll.
All of the above.
I'll get one for you next time.
My big prediction is that it's going to come down to the way these two men look in the debate. The debate is what killed Joe Biden when he finally was exposed that he was clapping his hands and counting his buttons and he hadn't been compos mentis for a few years. It will be the dynamic between the two men. We've seen Pollievre in the House. We've seen his. I like his videos where he explains about the problem of buying a house and stuff. He's very meat and potatoes about that stuff. But how is it going to translate on that stage? Will Jagmeet Singh be there? Will he
lay down his arms?
Well, no, but I mean, will the NDP, looking at the polls they see today, will they somehow try to do their own Kamala Harris switcheroo thing? So that's my big prediction is I want to see the debate and then I will have a good idea.
Okay, you mentioned that. So again, I'm pulling out a lot of threads. Alan Eagleson's on standby, but I'm too interested in the current events happening right now. And yes, this all may change in 2 hours. This is Antonia was like, I don't want to talk about things because it's going to date the podcast. And I said, obviously you don't know what Toronto Mike is about. No, we're time stamping this. This moment in time is happening and it might sound very dated in 2 hours and I don't care.
You'll have her back anyhow. We're talking it all. Yeah.
We'll get her back. But I do follow your stuff and I read the blog. Again, shout out your blog, not the public broadcaster.
Not the publicbroadcaster.com. That's my blog. That's
and you
my
share
handle.
Thoughts there. Although not as frequently as in this crazy time. I feel like
twice a week.
Is it twice a week?
Twice a week. In fact, I'm sort of remiss today. I usually do my sports on Monday, and I didn't get it finished because I was coming down here. So I'll finish it this afternoon. I'm doing a piece about older athletes and how they hang on Aaron Rodgers and people like that. Okay. So that's what it's about.
What do you think about FOTM Charlie Angus not resigning, or he says he's not going to run again, and he looked me in the eyes and said, I'm done running in politics. I'm going to do it from the outside. And what do you think about him somehow becoming leader of the federal NDP party?
Well, the P stands for party, so NDP.
Right, that's redundant. That's from the Department of Redundancy Department.
Redundancy.
And It's like when you say SIN number. What's your SIN number? Well, that's social insurance number, Mike.
Have at it is what I would say to Charlie. Who knows what will be left, excuse me, of the NDP when this all sort of reaches its end. Will they go even further left? Will they become total Marxist party, or will they come back to the Ed Broadbent? Again, for the younger folk out there who are listening to this, and you're younger than me, the Ed Broadbent NDP was a coalition of people who were union members, who were farmers. They were strong on the prairies, academics, obviously. But over the last, whatever it is now, 30, 40 years, they've morphed into basically a postgraduate department at a Canadian university is their base. They've lost all of that. And they used to be a nice place to park your vote when you didn't want to vote for Liberals and you couldn't vote for Conservatives. It was a safe place to park your vote. I remember how excited I was when I think it was Bob Ray and he won an NDP seat. I think it was over in Broadview, over that way. And I remember being very excited about it and saying, wow, that's great. More political voices, etc. But they just seem to have lost the plot.
Well, stay tuned. Charlie Angus is saying a lot of stuff many of us want to hear, so we'll see here. But, we'll see. But you mentioned the debates earlier, and you think Pierre Pollievre versus Mark Carney, the debates will decide it. And then it got me thinking of the Alan Gregg episode. This is all about the Alan Gregg. We are going to do 90 minutes on Alan Gregg, okay? But we talked about John Turner versus Brian Mulroney. And we still hear these clips, like these great moments in that debate about, selling out Canada.
You had a choice. You had a choice. Although I don't know, was that the debate about the free trade? I think there was a separate debate about the free trade. But the thing about you had a choice, of course, was about patronage. Right. And Mr. Mulroney cornered Mr. Turner. I always felt badly for John Turner. He just missed his slot. In politics and maybe in sports, you're a quarterback and, you're a really good quarterback, but the team can't assemble the right guys around you. Then you finally get the guys around you and you're not the quarterback you used to be. And John Turner was a guy who was ready. He almost beat Trudeau back in 1968. He had a chance. Wow. And then he just kind of went stale. Had all of the whatever. I'm going on.
But
about
now
John
we
Turner.
can just tell the world that Pakin wrote a book about Turner.
Yeah.
Like fairly recently.
My good friend Mark gosh, all of a sudden I've forgotten his name.
Carney.
No. Anyhow, one of my good friends used to go out on the road with John Turner when Turner was retired, and he would go and make all these appearances, and Mark would go out with him, and he would, introduce him to people and make sure he stayed out of trouble, and that he did his thing, and he was always very loyal to Mr. Turner. My beef with Mr. Turner, now here Alan Eagleson appearance here, is that he was one of Alan Eagleson's backers, one of the guys who made it very hard for us doing that story to really get the public to appreciate how badly Mr. Eagleson had abused hockey players. John Turner and John Sapinka and some of those people protected him for a long time. It was disgraceful.
My amazing segue to Eagleson is going to come in the form of a certain number 4 for the Boston Bruins. So stay tuned because it's getting there. But I got a note on the live stream from Andrew Ward. Andrew Ward,
yep,
listening live, says, "Is Bruce happy with the actions?" Is Bruce happy? That's all he wants to know. Are you happy, Bruce?
I'm 71 years old. How happy can I be?
And you're fit. I won't assume you're fit, but you look fit, is what I'm saying here. And you sound great. But 71 isn't like it used to be, right? Like I feel like when I was growing up, 71 was like ready to go to Ridley Funeral Home. Like you were ready. Yeah. And now 71, I would think you could still be out there biking.
My mother had another 20 years after this. I always say that 40 is the new 30, 60 is the new 50, 70 is the new 70. 70 is where all those things converge. That the lying to yourself, all of the things you try to do, there's only so much you can do.
Do you smoke cigarettes?
Never have.
See, I feel like that's a big deal. Like there's a 7-year-old who's been smoking all his or her life, and then there's a 7-year-old who didn't smoke.
Yeah.
And sometimes there's a delta of a difference there. Is delta a word? Okay, I'm Delta. I'm going to give you quickly here because I mentioned Ridley Funeral Home. I just want to give you a measuring tape from Ridley Funeral Home.
I give them.
I'm going to finish Andrew Ward's question. So Andrew, hold on there.
Give them.
But they're a pillar of this community. 14th and Lakeshore, good people.
I'm getting closer to it.
Why are you?
I could be a client soon.
I'm thinking of Peter Gross's mom. I mentioned her a lot on the show because Peter and I talk a lot, and his mom lives independently, does her own shopping, still running through the parking lot, like very spry, cooks for guests on special occasions, just completely independently living in her own condo. She's 101 years old. Marilyn Gross.
There you go.
That's our goal, okay?
Yeah, I don't know if I want to be 100.
Well, what if you had your wits about you and you were still physically able to do? If you have your mobility and you have your brain,
yeah.
Why wouldn't you?
But if I can't walk at least 9 holes of a golf course, physically, that would be something that would be a major loss to me. And I don't want to say this the wrong way, but I'm fortunate in the sense that my parents have passed on. We've gone through all of those stages, and I hear my friends talking about we've got to put mom and dad into a retirement home or whatever it is. We've gone through all that. And it's rough. It's a very rough end of life sequence. My dad died fairly quickly, which was good for him. My mom had dementia at the end, but the people out at Tansley Woods in Burlington took care of her. And so anyhow, I digress.
Well, I hope you live another 30 years, maybe plus. Maybe you'll be hanging out with 130-year-old Marilyn Gross.
Maybe I'll get another hole in one.
Make sure there's a witness to that. Nowadays, though, people might even have video.
It's my fear when I go out. I do walk courses alone when I'm down in Florida, for instance, late in the day. And I said, don't give me a hole in one here. I'd have to go get somebody out of a condo and say, come and look at this and take a picture with me.
Well, you know who's the great cheater of golf, according to many a good eyewitness?
Donald Trump.
Donald Trump. Yeah.
He's a rollover guy.
He's
got a 6 handicap. Now I know you're not a golfer.
No, but
you don't luck
Humble
into
tells me a bit about these golfing lies by Donald Trump.
Yeah, I mean you don't luck into a 6. That's a lot of cheating to get a 6. You have to do a lot of cheating to get a 6.
I think he's willing to do a lot of cheating.
I've seen his swing. And it's believable that he does that he can advance the ball. He seems to have some distance still for a guy his age. He must be a good up and down guy, chipping and putting guy. It's possible, but yeah, I mean, I remember, was it not Alan Slate, but his son.
Slate. Gary Slate.
Gary Slate. I played golf with Gary Slate, and one time he said, I don't count my score. If I want to move the ball, I move the ball, and I drink the whole time that I'm playing. And he said, are you okay with that? And I said, sure. I think those are the rules. Trump doesn't drink, but I think those are the rules with Trump, is that if you play with him, he has certain things. Well,
that's fine, but Trump cheating, that does say something about somebody's character when they cheat that. And now we're in Kim Jong-un.
I haven't seen anybody give me a specific when they were playing with him what he was doing in terms of cheating. Did he add his numbers wrong? Did he roll the ball over? Was it in the pond and then he pulled out without a penalty? I don't know.
All right, stay tuned on more golf talk. Swing thoughts here. Okay.
Well, it's about honesty. It's not really golf. It's his integrity.
Integrity. We'll get back to that. Andrew Ward.
No, we won't.
Wrote, is Bruce happy with the actions of his province's premier? You mentioned Danielle Smith earlier. Talk to me about how you, Bruce Dowbiggin, feel about Danielle Smith, premier of Alberta.
I think that what we need to do is we need to engage with as many people on the other side of the border, talking about these issues, how to negotiate it. Obviously the energy file that Alberta carries, and that's our livelihood, and that's the thing we represent within Canada, is extremely important to our economy. And I had no problems with her going down with Kevin O'Leary and meeting the people who matter. I think when all the premiers went down, you remember they went down to see to try and see Trump, and they got the third assistant deputy, whatever.
Yeah, DC. Yeah.
So in other words, it's not easy to get close to those people who matter. And Danielle Smith clearly had people who got her close to them, talked to them. I don't think she said, here I'm going to make a deal on behalf of Canada. I think what she did was stress how important oil was to the Americans, because people wouldn't understand us here in the East, where of course you do some nuclear and you have some other things. The Americans don't really have much heavy oil. They have a lot of light oil. Canada is the king of heavy oil. They need our heavy oil. And these are the kind of things that Danielle Smith was talking to the Americans about before you go jump off a cliff. This is what's important that you should know. So I had no problems with her going down there and doing that. And in the short term, she bought some time for, if not Alberta, for Canada, because they had the delay, etc. And I think part of that was her going down there and talking to people in positions of authority, which was not a given, which was you couldn't get on the plane and go and talk to the president unless you knew somebody who knew somebody. And so I had no problems with
Yeah, at Mar-a-Lago, she absolutely had access. Are you at all concerned about her intent? Like, perhaps she's open to the idea of Canada as a 51st state?
No, she's a Canadian. Here's another thing, and I write this. I try to tell people, Canada, nobody is more Canadian than Albertans. Albertans want to be Canada. What Albertans want is for the people who don't like Canada to get the hell out. And I don't have to tell you who they are, but it starts with a Q and ends with a C. If you don't want to play by the same sort of book that we all do, then get the heck out. And right now we have too many people who are not necessarily playing from the same playbook. Alberta doesn't want to go anywhere. We love what we do.
But Albertans, the residents of Alberta,
Right.
of all the provinces in this country, they are the most open to becoming 51st state of the United States. 51st state. Now, first let me
there's a lot of people, but it's a small majority of the people.
So, because I was, there's how do you say, Léger
poll?
it's in French. Yeah, there's a poll.
Yeah.
I won't go into too many of the details, but bottom line is this poll across the entire country of Canada says 9% of Canadians, and who are these 9%? Let me talk to them on Toronto Mike. Are you part of the 9%, Bruce?
But that what?
Do you want Canada to become a 51st state?
No.
Looking you in the eyes.
Why?
right now.
Why would Americans want all of our dynamic? They don't need all that.
Well, but would you be open to the becoming a part of the United States?
I would be open to a discussion about a hemispheric trade zone. Yes, I would.
Would that mean when you envision that in your mind's eye there, maybe on the golf course or whatever? Do you envision us using American money?
Well, now we're getting to the gist of it. Yes, I think the United States, the American dollar would be the core of our. It's the world currency. So I mean, it's not like it's anything radical. But the problem is as you start to think, oh well, wait a minute. Okay, so who's going to decide economic policy for this sphere? Will it be the American people? Will Canada have representation? If they're arguing about a point, do the Americans always win? So there's lots of complications. I don't think this is an easy thing to achieve, but I think that in a global sense, that the northern hemisphere of North America would be well advised to be united in its economy and united in its defense. And you know, I wrote a column 3 or 4 years ago, and I called it "Sometimes an Ingrate Nation," and it was about when Trump first came in, and it really fries me that Canadians don't understand that they don't pay for their own defense. The goods that they ship overseas are protected. The shipping lanes are protected. That about somewhere in the neighborhood of maybe 9-10% of all of Canadians have to get health care by going across the border. There's a whole bunch of stuff that comes with our being partners with the Americans that we seem to take for granted. And the defense thing in particular is a big nut to swallow for the Americans. And so what bothered me was that people just pass that over, and then we just condescend to the Americans. There's lots to laugh about with the Americans. They do goofy stuff. They try goofy stuff. They have guys like Trump. But at the end of the day, realize that we're there at their sufferance in a major way.
Right.
Now, if we wanted to pay for our defense and do all that sort of stuff, then we could tell them to go piss off. But you know, we have to also measure just a little bit what we have to say to them. And the condescension towards the Americans has never been, I think, a very nice part of our personality.
See, I feel these are two different things, though, because I agree with you. We took for granted that we would, like our big buddies to the south, would if we took for granted that if Russia started causing trouble up north or whatever, Arctic there, that, you know, U.S. would have our back and our heat, like Nelson Muntz or whatever, protecting Ralph. Who was it? Martin Prince. I think that's the Lemon of Troy episode, great episode of The Simpsons. But without a doubt, there's a lot of lessons being learned right now in this reliance on the United States, and there was a smugness with that too. Like we could kind of, you know, we could talk up a game without having to pay the price. We knew they were going to protect us because
we beaked.
Right. So that's different to me than you, Bruce Dowbiggin, feeling like you would like to be using American greenbacks as part of some kind of consortium or whatever with, you know, Mexico, United States, and Canada.
It's the world currency. There's a lot of places.
But that's different than use. Yeah. Okay. Well, not a lot of. So you know, there are. I think what you're describing is similar to the EU, right? Where there are many countries in Europe that are using the euro.
Right. Right.
But that's different than if all the countries said, hey, we're all going to use the German, what are they, francs or whatever.
But if you're paying for things internationally, if you're doing international buying, et cetera, it's almost always done using the American dollar. You will convert your currency to American dollar. I mean, there's exceptions, and I know some
These are conversions. That's different than actually.
They will send you. No, but it's the currency of the world. It's the backbone of the currency of the world is the American dollar. I don't say that because I love this stuff. They're dollar bills. I'm so fed up with their freaking dollar bills. I was down there. I throw them away when I'm in the States. Here, I tip people outrageously because I don't want to handle like this big wad of $1 bills. Anyhow, I don't worship the American dollar, but it's a reality. And I'm willing to think, like, where are we in 25 years? What's best for us? And I've said this before, maybe on your show, but other places too, is that if the Americans decide to not protect us, the Chinese will be on Vancouver Island in about 15 minutes, and the Russians will be in the Arctic in about 20 minutes. So we have to be realistic about what kind of world we're in, what kind of threats we would face if we didn't have the Americans behind us, and what kind of country we want to be. Because right now it's a very disparate kind of community in Canada. The hockey game was great. We looked at each other and said, oh, here's something, we're all on the same side. But there's so few things that we feel that way about these days. And so you have to be open to saying, okay, well, where are we in 20 to 25 years? Will we have the same borders? Are we going to sell some of our water to the Americans? Because definitely Trump would love to buy our water as well as other national stuff. I don't think you should be declared a heretic for asking those questions. But right now, that's considered to be almost treasonous.
Well, because it sounds like what you're describing there would most definitely jeopardize our sovereignty.
That's possible, yeah. But on the other hand,
But why is that on the table? Like, I guess
on the
that's
other hand,
where, go ahead.
the Chinese being on Vancouver Island would threaten our sovereignty too. I'm just saying we have to be able to imagine all of the possibilities of what could happen in the next 25 years when we're deciding what to do today and what policies to put in place.
And clearly, you just got back from Florida, so you are still comfortable spending your leisure time in the United States and
we
spending
have a
money
family
down
home there. I'm like the Fords. We have a family home there. And what's interesting is my next door neighbors, the husband and wife, he refused to vote for Trump, and she did vote for Trump. And so it was interesting to hear them have the discussion as Americans talking about their attitude towards him. So, but Southern Florida is it's pretty Republican.
Okay, so I got to finish up this poll thing here quickly, which is that really quickly here, which is that 9% of Canadians across the country were, I'm going to get the right terminology, wanted Canada to become the 51st state. 85% do not. Geez, that seems low to me, 85, but okay. And they went by province, right? So the support for the idea was highest in Alberta. Shock there. Right. 15% of those polled in Alberta wanted to become the 51st state. 15. Right. Meanwhile, in Atlantic Canada, it was only 3%. So it's almost like as you move, So, and then if we talk about this province, Ontario, Quebec, British Columbia, about 10% in those the three largest populated provinces in this country. So the other interesting thing, which would not shock anybody, is that people who consider themselves conservative supporters were far more likely to support becoming a U.S. state than people who consider themselves liberal or NDP voters. Like only 97%, 97, Bruce, now that's a good number, of liberal and NDP voters said they did not want to become the 51st state. But 18% of conservative supporters said they would like to become a U.S. state. Think about that. In this country, 18% of people who would be casting a vote for Pierre Pollievre said they wanted Canada to become a U.S. state. I find that disturbing.
First of all, you're presuming they will vote for the Conservatives.
I am. That is a presumption on my part. Right?
I think in the election last time, 5% of the election went to the Max Bernier party, which is much further right than the Conservative Party.
Right.
So, but the numbers that you're quoting are right. Small numbers, and they're directly proportionate to how independent you think you are. Alberta has a financial independence that it could exploit if it wanted to go out. The Maritimes has a squiddly dot, and I say that my brother lives in PEI, my son lives in Fredericton. I know how it is down there, so I understand that they feel particularly vulnerable. But all of these numbers are really kind of inconsequential in a big picture. What you're talking about is that 85% of people want to stay in Canada. Now, what does that mean? What does that that mean you want to stay in Canada? Does that mean you want to stay in Canada with the equalization program the way it is, etc.? I mean, it's one of those polling tricks that you ask. Would you
want to become a 51st state is how they worded this.
Would you go and get a rescue dog? Well, yeah. I mean, it appeals to your virtue, etc. The question gets more complicated when you get down to the details. And again, people in Alberta know how much they contribute to Confederation. They know how much money they make and what it's worth to the country, and they know how important oil is to the country. And it's hard to underemphasize or to overemphasize how people in Alberta feel about Quebec having stopped the pipeline going through their province, and this whole thing about it's not in our culture, etc. Well, it's part of our country, and had we been able to take the oil to the East Coast, we'd have been able to build refineries in New Brunswick, which certainly needs the work. We wouldn't have had to buy Saudi oil or Venezuelan oil, etc. And some of the stuff that's been going on right now with Mr. Trump, with him, exploiting our vulnerabilities, wouldn't have happened. I mean, that's just one small thing, but people in Alberta are very resentful of Quebec, what they did. And then on top of that, Quebec takes $14 billion a year in equalization, and they have hydropower and they have other things that are off the table. So there are all sorts of things that are going on in our country that need to be the trans-border stuff, the BC wine coming to Ontario or whatever. There's lots of stuff that has to be ironed out. So these numbers, these are boxcar numbers. They sound interesting. Sure. They sound good, but
it's podcast fodder, okay?
Yeah.
And those talk radio stations across the country here. Bruce, I'm glad you're here. You're my Alberta correspondent. I need to know what Alberta's thinking, because I do tend, like many people, I fall into this trap of thinking everybody thinks like my Toronto circle, and then realizing I'll talk to somebody from Alberta like yourself and realize, they think the opposite over there. Like it is something we tend to fall into this trap where I won't call it the echo chamber because I don't know what this community is here, but I am a born and raised Toronto guy, and I never moved to Calgary like you did here. But back to Danielle Smith for a moment here, because you sound kind of, I think you felt it was good that she went to Mar-a-Lago and did that whole thing with Kevin O'Leary, I guess, invited her down there. And you felt that was good because you get the ear of people like Donald Trump when you're hanging out at Mar-a-Lago, and you felt that was a good thing. Danielle Smith is headlining an event in Florida later this month with right-wing social media personality Ben Shapiro. And a recent tweet,
I like Ben.
And a recent tweet from Ben Shapiro. Yeah, you can like Ben. That's okay with me. I won't stop you.
Fellow podcaster.
He recently tweeted at our current Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau. This is the quote. "When we take Canada, you will be expelled to Panama to work on the canal." Like that's the quote. So I'm just curious. You're comfy. This is fine. This is all fun and games here. That Shapiro can tweet that, and then Danielle Smith can go smile and headline an event in Florida with that gentleman.
I have a wide berth for public speech. We allow people to go in the midst of an intersection in the middle of the day and have a rally in which they advocate for the destruction of Israel and the killing of Jews, and we don't put them all in jail. So I have a pretty wide berth for what's acceptable.
I guess she's not.
They're making a political argument. She's at it. There's nothing that says that she's endorsing what Shapiro says.
Well,
there's pictures.
It's inferred.
I'll give you an example. There's pictures of Mark Carney sitting beside Ghislaine Maxwell, who of course was Epstein's procurer.
Oh no, that was debunked. That was debunked.
There's pictures of it. Does that make
AI
him?
Pictures.
Does that make him? Well, there's other pictures of him with.
I don't believe on that one though. I don't believe he's ever met her. Is my point. Like he says he hasn't met her, and that was proven to be a doctored photo. That photo that was that's the kind of misinformation we're dealing with. Well, in 2025.
I've yet to see anybody to say that it wasn't a real photograph. And my point being that even if it is a real photograph, he's sitting next. He's a political person. He's a public person. You get pictures taken with you all the time. So somebody goes to an event and says something, and when Danielle Smith's there, does that mean she undertakes to agree with it? No, it doesn't. It means that she's on the dais at a place and she's been invited to speak, and she speaks her mind about what she's representing in Alberta.
And you believe?
Can we only speak to people who we believe, who are on our side? I mean, this is the problem.
If that were true, I wouldn't have Bruce Dowbiggin in the basement.
No,
and
you just said it. I mean,
but to me,
we have an echo chamber in Alberta too, by the way. So in case,
so it's good we talk once in a while.
Yeah.
Like this. So it's funny. I have a question from him in a moment. James Early on Blue Sky said he loves Toronto Mike because one day Bruce Dowbiggin's in the basement, the very next day Scott Thompson's in the basement.
Yeah.
Like this is the variety being the spice of life.
That's why I come here.
This is why you're here, and I'm glad you're here. And have I given you the lasagna yet from Palma Pasta? I have a lasagna in my freezer from Palma Pasta. They're in Mississauga and Oakville. And as you know, because you've had many lasagna from here, I think it all ends up with your son maybe in nearby. But delicious, and they're going to feed everybody who comes out to TMLX 18 on June 26th. So June 26th, 2025, 6 to 9 p.m. If you're hearing my voice right now, you're invited to come to 30 Queen Elizabeth Boulevard in South Etobicoke. That's Great Lakes Brewery. GLB will buy you your first beer, and then Palma Pasta will cater the event. Free food. Come hang with other FOTMs. It's not an echo chamber because we even allow people like Bruce Dowbiggin there. So, Bruce, you are...
I'd never be seen with a bunch of radicals like...
I know you'll probably be in Calgary, but if you were in town June 26th, I would love to see you.
I might be in Ireland, actually. I think I might be in Ireland then.
Oh, the motherland. Okay. St. Patrick's Day is coming up. They have a great stout. I know everybody thinks Guinness, and I'm here to tell you there's actually a fantastic stout from Great Lakes Beer that would be made in Canada replacement for...
Stout is great. Why, are we down on Guinness now, or what?
Well, no, we're not down on Guinness. We're on GLB,
Canadian
right? So it's like
okay.
brewed right here.
Sorry, I thought you were making a statement about the Irish or something.
No, I had a great... I got to say, I guess you've done it too, maybe. You'll tell me now. But the brewery, what's it called? The Stonehouse? The brewery in Dublin where they make the Guinness.
Yeah.
We did the tour, Monica and I, and we had that. You get a pint at the top, and then you overlook city, and that might be the most delicious non-GLB beer you'll ever have in your life. Bruce is what I'm telling you.
If it's your birthday, they also will give you the mug to keep the mug.
Okay, next time I got to doctor some.
And I went to Jameson's on the other side of town, which is the whiskey place.
Right, we had
24-year-old Jameson's whiskey.
See, now we're to Ireland. I'm pro-Ireland. My peoples are from Ireland. I've been to Ireland. Love Ireland. Top of the morning to you, Bruce.
Oh, it's lovely to be on your show.
Okay, so lots of ground being covered here. No, I'm cooking with gas now, and we are going to segue over to Alan Eagleson actually in a moment here because I have the perfect segue. Okay. Like I said, I have the perfect segue. Right. We'll see how it goes. But so Danielle Smith, you're comfortable. Even the perception from this neck of the woods is there's a MAGA leanings over there, but you're telling me she is. You're telling me, in your opinion, Danielle Smith is in favor of Canada remaining an independent, sovereign nation and does not want Canada to be absorbed by the United States, annexed by Donald Trump. Okay,
sure.
I want to make sure that my friend Bruce is on board with that because we have to dig it out.
She's a loyal Canadian, and she's representing her province and all that that means, and she's trying to do it within Canada and with some people who just won't listen to her. So British Columbia is just, no, I shouldn't say British Columbia. I should say the lower mainland and the island are just so foobar these days. It's incredible. It's incredible. But you can't have everything.
And to what do you, because on this very program, and it's no secret how I might lean in different matters here. I'm not a big Pierre Pollievre fan. That might shock some listeners if they hear it right now. But as recently as December on this program, I would speak to people from the CBC about his pledge to defund the CBC, and I would speak to it as an inevitability. When Pierre Pollievre has a majority government in this country, I saw it as an inevitable majority government for Pierre Poilievre's Conservative Party. It's just a matter of, it's been 10 years, time to change things up. It was going to change, and I had accepted this. I'd accepted it. But since this 51st state rhetoric from Donald Trump, at least if, and we can only take a grain of salt with these polls, but at least if you believe the polls, if you feel the zeitgeist, the tables have turned. I no longer believe it's an inevitability that Pierre Pollievre will win a majority government. I'm just curious if you think he's still got a chance to form that majority government after 10 years of liberal rule.
Well, the poll I saw on CBC itself last night said that they are literally right on the dividing line for a majority. The Conservatives are still. Now, I'm expecting, of course, Mr. Carney to get a bump, and we'll see that. That's natural. We'll see how long the bump lasts. We saw the Kamala Harris bump last right through to the election, and then we found out that a lot of the pollsters weren't telling us the truth. But anyhow, I'm sure he'll get a natural bounce, and then we'll have to see what happens to it after that. Again, I don't want to get more than 2 weeks ahead of myself on
lots to happen
on any of this stuff. But the situation that I see right now is very fluid. And another thing I'm really curious about is Doug Ford, your premier, a conservative,
third majority in a row.
I'm really curious
that happened.
What he does now. Does Doug Ford sit there and say, okay, I'm a conservative and I really don't like the Liberals, well, I will support Polyev? That's option one. Option two is, do I say, maybe I'll just kind of sit this one out? That's a possibility. And number three is, he sees that if Polyev doesn't win this, that there will be a vacancy at the head of the National Conservative Party. Is that what he does? I'm really, he's going to be a
How's
big
his
part of
French?
this.
Have we heard his French
He
yet?
has none.
Because I heard yesterday, I was hearing, my mom was telling me, and my mom doesn't speak French, by the way, fluently, although I have 4 kids who speak French fluently, so they can tell me about the accents.
C'est formidable.
But they were, Mark Carney's French isn't very good. And then I heard him talking yesterday, and
It's
I think
okay.
to my Toronto
Serviceable.
ears, it sounded fine. Like I was like, oh yeah, I guess maybe the accent's not great or whatever. And I was wondering, I guess in 2025, you still have to have decent French to become prime minister. And then I thought about Doug Ford, because I've long said, I think Doug Ford, and this is my thoughts, again, speaking for Mike, just speculating in his South Etobicoke basement right now, everybody. I think Doug Ford would like to see Pierre Pollievre fail in this upcoming election and be ousted, because much like, Aaron O'Toole or Andrew Scheer or whatever couldn't usurp the Liberal Party. And I see Mr. Three Majorities in Ontario and riding the whole, Canada is not for sale train. Yeah. I can see Doug Ford sliding in there.
You can't buy those wines we've already paid for. Yes,
but you can send them back and get full refund. You know this? It's like books. Yeah. Well, you know the book world, right?
Well, yeah.
So if you don't open these bottles,
I
whatever, you can ship them back and get the money.
And then I saw the consignment thing debunked. That in fact that they had purchased the wines and that they couldn't return them. I don't know. I've seen both things.
Well, we'll dig in that. But regardless, I'm glad he did that. Like, this is a rare Dofo move I approve of. But I can see, to finish that stupid long-winded thought, is yes, Dofo slides in, becomes leader of the Conservative Party, and yes, at some point down the line, it's Prime Minister Doug Ford, believe it or not.
Yeah, I don't think he'll wash in the West as the leader of the Conservative Party, but that's okay. Listen, I'm just, as I say, fascinated as a matter of pure politics where he decides to go. One of his cabinet ministers, Neil Lumsden, is a friend of mine, and I'm curious.
CFL.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Have you had him on your show?
No, but I used to hear him on Primetime Sports.
You should.
I would have him on.
Interesting guy. He's a member of Beverly out in Burlington.
His son was doing the
I know
bobsled.
Yeah, and I know him. He still lives
in
Calgary. Yeah, Jesse. I know Jesse, and he almost made the NFL. He was a pretty good player. Yeah. Can I get back to the CBC? Because we sort of hinted at that.
Get back there.
My position about the CBC and, let's say, TV Ontario has been and always is that I believe there's a market for it. Right now, I think only maybe 2 or 3% of Canadians get their news from CBC.
Is that right?
It's a smaller number.
I'm shocked by that.
It's a smaller number. But there is a business argument for a broadcaster who promotes what the CBC does, or the way they cover the news and the radio shows and all that stuff. And I don't think that we have to be going and crush them. But what I would suggest first is you find that if somebody in the private market would like to buy the CBC or parts of the CBC and resurrect them or have them work. I still think that there's a desperate market across Canada for local news and radio and TV. In Calgary, a city of, what are we, 1.6 million, 1.7 million now? Oh. The CBC TV station, I think, has maybe 4 reporters. There's nothing there. So it's kind of an insult to the people that there's nobody covering. And that's a big market. My son in Fredericton, it's even smaller. And Charlottetown, where my other brother lives, it's just like, they're just keeping the lights on. So I think that there's an argument for maintaining local broadcasting and stuff. But I would like to see, to a large extent, if we're going to continue to fund it as taxpayers, that they would get out of the opinion and news-making business at the federal level. The conflict of interest right now, where they're being paid, not just MCTV and a bunch of other people are getting paid. The conflict that we have right now with our media being paid what they're being paid by the government to basically stave off the reality of our markets is unconscionable, and we should get away from it. But I still think that there's a model for a CBC radio, regional kind of networks that's out there, and doing a couple of documentaries about lichen and elk and whatever else they do.
Because, Bruce, as you know, if you leave it to private market, let's pick on CTV here, right? The biggest private news broadcaster, but they'll close down if they don't think it's worthwhile to be in these smaller markets. They'll shut down their presence there.
Yeah, well, we keep putting off their day of destiny by throwing them new money and funding them. The chorus people. I mean, they just. I guess it was our friend Sid Sixero was doing the morning show. I think that was
Breakfast television.
And he's out the door.
He's gone.
We keep giving them enough money so that they are able to put off making the decisions they have to about what they're doing. They're just warehousing all of this broadcasting, which they just throw on the air. It's mindless pap a lot of the time, and it gets them away from the inevitability of what they're doing. The government has got to stop funding the media in this country so that the people who run it will give us the service we want. Right now, they're giving us the service they want, and it's not helping anybody.
Do you, Bruce, think that there is a direct line between the government that happens to be in office and the editorial, the actual CBC coverage? Like, do you think... because I do know prior, and again, I'm going back here, I'm a bit younger than you, but not too young to remember 10 years or so of Harper being the prime minister in his Conservative Party. Did you think there was interference at that point between the Harper government and the CBC? I'm trying to understand. Are you suggesting the CBC is slanted towards whatever government is in power?
My opinion is that journalism, since I first got into it, has changed. When I was first at CBLT Radio in 1983, we had people like Bill Copps, and we had guys who were meat and potatoes kind of people who were there. They didn't come from any refined political machine or whatever. Right now, our broadcasting, in particular our news and current affairs, is dictated by a lot of people who've come out of higher education, where they've gone to Carleton or whatever, been educated, and as a result of that, their politics are a certain way. So they don't have to be told to do stuff. They're doing what they believe is true, and that their hearts are pure, and they're doing the broadcasting that they think is necessary to the nation. And we don't have the diversity of people informing these decisions that we used to. And again, at CBC, I have maybe two friends left who I work with, and they're hanging on by their fingernails. And they're the ones who tell me that the people that they talk to in the newsrooms are clueless about a broader sense of the society, that they have a very prescribed view of their mission, and that they're carrying a torch for progressive things, et cetera, and that they don't understand that what really people want to know about is what's the weather tomorrow and why is the traffic so slow.
All right, Bruce speaks for Bruce. I hear you. Now, what are your thoughts on Pierre Pollievre's...
you don't think that's quick? A lot of people?
Well, I mean, I'm not here to tell you you're wrong in this conversations you're having with people. Like,
okay.
I'm not here to tell you wrong. I'm more interested in what you think on these things. I don't necessarily agree, but I'm interested in your opinions.
Well, listen.
But Pierre Pollievre, again, and then I'm going to hockey. So this is imminent. Hockey talk is imminent. But Pierre Pollievre, do you think he has a likability problem? Like, simply in terms of, they often talk... I find he's making Doug Ford seem warm and fuzzy. Like, oh, let me go have a coffee with Doug. Like, when I see Pierre Pollievre.
Pollievre has the charisma of a turnip. But I would say the same thing about Carney. Carney last night was the worst rotary speaker I've ever heard. I mean, he's not... It was real... Imagine somebody under the age of 50 listening to that speech and thinking, yeah, that's something I got to get on it. But so I would say the same thing about Pollievre, is he's refined a certain speaking style, and his comms people have got him in a certain place, but there's nothing dynamic about it. And I'm just kind of waiting for him to be dynamic in a way. Again, whatever you think of Trump, he set himself apart by being a dynamic personality that was able to seize the dais, and I don't know. He's good
at television, as Antonia was saying the other day.
He's very good.
Great episode, by the way. You got to listen to Antonia.
I'll listen to the full thing. In preparation, I listened a little bit, but as I say, I don't like to listen too much.
You're going to love it. You're going to love it.
Because it would get too much of your communist stuff in my head, and I would be all... I'm just kidding.
Did you watch the Four Nations event?
I did. Well, here's I had this question too. How would things have changed had we lost the second game as well as the first game? Or what would have happened? Because I think we need a third game, right? The Americans beat us pretty good in the first game, and Canada beat them in the second game. So kind of, as far as I'm concerned, they're tied. We needed a third game.
Well, you're changing the rule. You're changing the rules, Bruce. Right. Like that doesn't matter that we lost the first game.
I think that's what we needed, was a third game to decide. Because if we'd only played the one game against the Americans, we'd have had to change our development system. It was terrible. We had no goalies, and then all of a sudden,
Right.
it's just
in that overtime he stood on his head, and all is well in the world.
3 or 4 games. I would have liked to have seen. I still would like to see that, and maybe we'll see it at the Olympics.
It's like, I think Antonia might have said something. I mentioned that Doug Ford had a majority government for the third time, and again, I'm no Doug Ford voter here, but we finally have a Liberal MPP in this particular riding here in South Etobicoke, and I was grateful. But I pointed out to Antonia that, no, these are the rules. Like, this is the system. This is like somebody saying Canada is now communist because we have a new prime minister without an election, right? Like, no, this is the rule. It doesn't matter that X% of eligible voters voted for a Doug Ford progressive conservative MPP. That doesn't matter. Like, these are rules. So this whole idea that we needed a third game, no, the top 2 teams were going to play at this time in this location in Boston on this night, and the winner of that game was going to be declared the champion of the Four Nations event. And Canada, fair and square, Canada won that game.
There's some the stuff about fairness. Had it been the champion of the NHL regular season, the Vancouver Canucks would have 2 Stanley Cups. They were the best team 2 years in a row.
The President's Trophy.
But it doesn't work. And I fully hear your argument. I'm just saying, as a hockey fan,
right?
And we're talking about which was the better team. I think that they were dead even, and each team had what I would consider to have been a convincing win. I'd like to have seen a tie-breaking win. I'm not saying that they had to change the format or they'd have to go back and play it.
But you're not questioning the integrity of the fact that we Canadians are calling ourselves the champion of the Four Nation event. You're not questioning the integrity of that declaration.
The champions of a format that was invented by the NHL about 6 weeks before. But no, listen, you take from it what you want. If the idea is that we're the kings of hockey for winning that game, God bless you. I'm just saying.
Although we'll just chime in to say, as I am wearing the Canada jersey today, but best on best, right? Best on best, it has been a long time since Canada did not win a best on best tournament, because the last best on bests we've had was this Four Nations, and prior to that, I think it was 9 years. There was the World Cup that we won, right, with Marchand having the big goal or whatnot, and then it was the Olympics in Sochi. I think we're going back there. We won that gold medal, and then it was the Olympics in Vancouver. Mm-hmm. And we, as you know, Sidney Crosby of the golden goal. So you got to go back. You got to go back to 2006, I guess it is, since Canada, when I think Sweden won that year.
You're talking men's hockey.
Sorry. I'm talking men's hockey. Yes.
See, I thought I'd throw that in there for a guy like you,
but
a progressive like you, to forget women.
I'm going to say something I got to say something controversial. I can't have you saying all the controversial stuff. I actually am of the belief if the Canadian men's hockey team played the Canadian women's hockey team, that the men would win. I'm of this opinion.
I say.
What do you say about that? You're not going to say that. Okay.
I'll let that just hang out there for you to defend in the future. I agree with you 100%.
Well, there's no rule saying women can't play in the NHL.
That's true,
right? So
that's true.
I'll leave it there. James,
there could be a goalie. I think there could be a woman goalie, but I just don't think the strength and all the other things that go into being an NHL.
But I believe if there could be, there would be. Because it would be great marketing PR. Like Manon Rayon was used in the exhibition games because Esposito, it's all going to come back to hockey here, she didn't play an NHL game, as you know. Manon Rayon.
Listen, I wrote my column.
And I love women's hockey. It's competitive and amazing. I'm here to point out that due to biology and some other factors, I don't know, is this controversial? Controversial?
I like to see you skating backwards here. Now, I thought I'd throw that in on you.
I would like to see, though. Let's see the Canadian men's play the Canadian women. It would be... I don't know if it would be a fair fight.
I wrote 2 columns about the invented championship of the world, whatever the NHL decided.
An NHL invention that beat the hell out of the fucking All-Star game. We'll agree on that.
Absolutely. No Czechs, no Russians, etc. But I digress. And after the first game, I said, Canada hits wall wins. What do we do next? And then the second one was Canada won the game, and when it mattered, they won the game that mattered.
Right.
And you could say that the American guys were injured or whatever. That doesn't matter. You play with what you got that day. But all I felt like afterwards was, considering how we felt after the first game, that we really should have put the hammer down and really established that we are the best. We just, on that one night we were the best. But 2 nights or 3 nights.
The night when it mattered, we were the better team, and we won that game without a doubt. Okay, I think I'm going to read James Early's question now, but I was going to ask. Oh yeah, you mentioned no Russians, no Czechs. Russians were not invited because Putin invaded Ukraine.
He did. You should.
Is there a question?
Jeez, hang on. Let me check my.
I know you're you know, Donald Trump may have been on the record at some point saying that Ukraine caused that war, and I'm here to tell you, Ukraine was a sovereign nation invaded by Putin, and Putin started that war. And if Putin wants to end that war, he can take his troops out of Ukraine.
Mm-hmm. Well,
okay, but that's why they weren't invited, and I'm glad Russia wasn't invited. But the Czechs, I think, if it was a 5 nations event, the Czechs would be there. Like, they're the 5th.
Yeah, Czech is pretty good. And listen, the what's his name's beat Canada. Whatever the last tournament was earlier in the tournament.
Was that Latvia?
Latvia.
But this will be next year, right? We're so close to having best on best in the Olympics, and that's when you'll see Draisaitl and Germany and all that stuff.
I hold that against Gary Bettman, as they have destroyed international hockey under his regime. He thought it was more important to try to make the Phoenix Coyotes work in the desert,
right?
And I hold that against him.
You know, we agree on that. Finally, we agree on something. James Early wrote about when he heard he was coming on. He said, in his book, The Defense Never Rests, not to be confused with F. Lee Bailey's memoir, that's in parentheses.
Yes.
Outlined, kind of awkwardly written, but you know what it means. Outlined Alan Eagleson's financial mistreatment of Bobby Orr. Both Bobby Orr and Wayne Gretzky seem to gravitate towards individuals like Donald Trump. Is it hockey's version of the Stockholm Syndrome? I'll use James Early's question there, and I'll let it sit there for a minute to please, I'm more interested in Gretzky than Orr, but Orr will tie us to Eagleson, and we can have a little chat about that. But what are your thoughts on Wayne Gretzky's absolute silence when it comes to his friend Donald Trump's threats to annex our sovereign nation, the beautiful Canada?
I think he, as a private citizen, he's entitled to his silence.
Sure.
I think both Orr lives maybe a couple of miles away from our place in Florida. His son had a store nearby us, a pet grooming store that used to be called Paws for Hockey, P-A-W-S for Hockey.
Very clever.
So he's down there, and they're both Americans really now. They've been down there. They've lived there for a long time. Gretzky living mostly in Southern California, and they're Americans, and they have an opinion, and they're allowed to express their opinion. What they see in Trump and that they don't see in Canada anymore, I can't speak to. But they both felt like that they wanted to say, this is who I'm supporting in the election. And that's their right as whatever. So begs the question, and what you're probably saying is, what obligation do they still have to Canada to carry the flag? Are we paying them enough? Are we not paying them enough? What do we need for them to do so that they can sort of make us happy with their opinion? I noticed that the ad for Gretzky, that was the one where he was talking to people in a drugstore, seems to have disappeared lately. The one about some sort of...
I noticed all the Gretzky, be it betting, sports betting, or yes, that one where he's the pharmaceutical ad you're talking about right now.
In other words, what does he owe us anymore, I guess is the question. He's entitled to his political opinion. So the other question is, what does he owe us? Does he really owe us to get out there? I don't know why they had him as the guy for that game, why they hauled him out.
A bit of a troll job, if you ask me, to see that it was Gretzky at a time when people like me who slept on Wayne Gretzky sheets I could feel in the pit of my stomach anger and disappointment, just even seeing his face. In that game we lost with the 3 fights in 9 seconds, right? The one that was in Montreal, it was Mario Lemieux, and I had the opposite reaction. Right. I was like, I loved
Mario's been in the States for ages, but Mario never said, you know what?
He never wore a MAGA hat.
Well, he doesn't support anything. Mario's about Mario, and God bless him, that's his right. But the Quebec, they wanted him to do stuff in Quebec politically, and he hasn't done it. And so he's kept his opinion to himself, and nobody has roasted him. I don't know how long in advance they had booked Gretzky. Had they arranged with Gretzky 6 months ago to do this? 6 weeks ago? 6 hours? I don't know. I mean, a lot of that stuff is lined up well in advance. The NHL might have been a bit squeamish about him. On the other hand, the game was in Boston, and Gretzky is an American citizen, or partly American citizen as well.
Yeah, it's a dual citizenship.
So maybe they thought, it's on a purely hockey basis too, by the way. The stuff about booing the national anthem is such horse shit. I'm sorry.
Okay, you're anti-boo.
Well, and here's for a really practical reason. Vancouver Canucks, for instance, I think they have 6 Americans in their lineup. The Raptors and all
Our
these
best
guys.
player is American, Austin Matthews.
So you're standing there in Toronto and they're booing your national anthem. Are you going to resign there? Are you going to tell people, oh yeah, you want to come up and play here? From a purely sports point of view, I think it's self-defeating. Yeah, it gives you about a minute or two of happiness. We booed them, blah, 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 blah. But in the end, you're just saying this is kind of a toxic place if you're an American to come and play. I just thought it was stupid.
Oh, it is toxic right now. Similarly, why they'd boo the Russian anthem in Ukraine. Okay,
Well, we haven't had.
What time is it, Bruce? What time is it? It's 11:29. Come back. He said everything changes in 2 days here.
Well, Mr. Trump told me that he wasn't going to bomb until a little later this afternoon.
Not funny, Bruce. No. Not funny here. And nobody, by the way, to your point, nobody said Gretzky doesn't have the right to stay silent. Of course, Wayne Gretzky has the right to stay silent.
Certain Toronto Star columnists apparently had other.
Your buddy Bruce Arthur
felt like he had an obligation to come out and say things. He has no obligation.
I would just say to that is his silence speaks volumes, and I think he now will. And again, I don't care who I heard Donald. I heard Doug Ford, Bobby Orr, Janet Gretzky. These are people who spoke up for Wayne. Yeah. No Wayne talk. Everybody's speaking up for Wayne, like, oh, he's really hurt. He's being booed in Canada, whatnot, and other stuff here. I'm saying these are the consequences of your inaction. Like the ramifications of your silence are that you are not popular in Canada right now. Even people will speak about changing streets name. I know in Edmonton they got a statue for him because I've taken a photo by it because I love this.
And there's the highway that's just next to the white mud. Yeah,
right. Yeah. So this is the consequence. Your silence speaks volumes. It is wild to me that he hasn't said anything because that is essentially like saying I'm not going to speak against Donald Trump on this issue, and it makes a lot of Canadian hockey fans upset.
He seems content to take the wrath of people. It doesn't seem to be something that's moving him at the moment.
No.
And were I in his position, I'd have been more politically savvy about it. But he's entitled. He's entitled.
And again,
he's done enough for our freaking country. And another thing that bothers me about it is, you remember we had the whole charade about him, his wife was doing the gambling.
Of course I do.
You remember the loyalty oath, how everybody protected him?
Yeah.
That it was his wife.
That's how much we love this guy.
That's how much we were willing to go to excuse this guy. But now, he's now found exactly where the line is. And he's gone.
He said he's done enough for this country. Okay, he hasn't lived in this country since the late 80s when he became a member of the Los Angeles Kings. He was sold by Pocklington there. But this matters so much more than a hockey game. Okay, we're talking about Four Nations Cup. We could have lost that game in overtime.
The Four Nations Cup, the history of this event. Yeah. Anyhow.
So I was, I watched it with my 10-year-old. It's the first time he was really into one of these things, and it was a very exciting moment in this house when we won that game. Who was it? Connor McDavid. Connor McDavid scored. Great pass by Mitch Marner, by the way.
The guy they just tried to trade? Apparently didn't want to go to Carolina?
Is that the latest rumor? Is that confirmed here? I know.
He was asked if he would go to Carolina, and he said no.
Yeah, he's got the no trade clause. Okay.
I like Marner. I was hoping that.
Well, Marner. The problem as a Leaf fan is Marner is an excellent regular season hockey player, and he was excellent in that Four Nations Cup. But we haven't seen a great performance by Marner in the postseason when it matters. Yeah, but here, I'm off topic. Because I realize now, we actually... How do you feel about the fact that we might wind down this chatter here with Gretzky here? And how do you feel about the fact that next time you visit, we dive into the Alan Eagleson talk, okay?
I'm not surprised.
Because I actually realize I don't have unlimited time. It's already been 90 minutes. And I enjoyed this chat, by the way. Have you got all your gifts? Yes, you have. But just on the Gretzky front, is the consequences to his silence is that a lot of us diehard hockey fans who grew up in the 80s worshiping those Edmonton Oilers teams that he captained to Stanley Cups, we don't want to see that guy's face right now.
I'll give a little teaser for when we finally ever get around to Eagles. Maybe he'll be dead
next time.
The next time. But when I was doing the story, and I was doing it along with Russ Conway down in Boston, so I don't want to make it sound like it was all me.
Of course.
And Carl Brewer and Sue Foster and those people. In any event,
right.
The one guy who could have gone to Alan Eagleson and basically belled the cat and said, show us the numbers. Here's what we understand to be the facts. Let's do it. Gretzky for a long time just did nothing about it, didn't want anything to do with it. I'm a hockey player, etc. He didn't feel any loyalty to the other hockey players to do it. And when he was finally forced to do it, I don't know, I think they showed him a copy of a Scott Young book or something or other and said, "Here, read this." And he basically gave Eagleson a carte blanche to move forward. And Eagleson said, "Well, I showed Wayne Gretzky and no problems there." So I felt Wayne let down hockey players at a time when guys like Andy Moog, Pat Verbeek, and other guys stood up and said, no, this is what really happened, and Wayne didn't. So that's a teaser for an Eagleson discussion.
Which I actually really want to do, but I know now that you do frequently visit the city, and when you're in town, you make 90 minutes for me, which I love. And we could find out what's Alberta thinking, what's Bruce thinking, and we could dive into this Alan Eagleson thing.
Sure.
But today, there's just too much flying around I wanted to chat about.
I figured as much.
You
need to do the Saturday Night Live thing where 5-time people get a jacket. I'd come and wear your jacket.
How many times has it been? Do you know?
I think this is 5.
5. Okay, I got to get a jacket sponsor, you're telling me.
I said to my wife I was doing it today. She said, "Get a life. What are you, 5 times?"
Well, does she know it's 1,647? Because percentage of a whole, as you know, 6 out of 1,647, not that much.
I'm really happy to come. I always am.
Fuck Gretzky. Just want to put it on the record here. I hope Pierre Pollievre is not elected.
When we speak later today, Gretz and I'll tell him that you're put off.
Do that, and way more than fuck Gretzky, because he is just a hockey guy, and he can be silent if he wants. I had this talk about the sock the other day, but the guy, I'm going to just fuck Donald Trump. That's a guy in Toronto saying that. I don't know about Alberta, warm fuzzies for Donald Trump. But this guy and this rhetoric, these threats, he's interfering in my life. He's causing anxiety to my children.
Why do Canadians think he has to be your friend? He's voted in by Americans.
I don't care.
Us.
No, difference between being, first of all, we're supposed to be allies, Canada and USA.
He's negotiating.
We have a deal that he negotiated. Yeah. Right? I don't remember what they renamed. You can remind me. NAFTA, he renamed it. He likes to rename things, okay? But we had a deal. And he's violated the deal, and I'm sick of the tariff threats. I'm sick of the whole we're going to redraw the borders. I'm sick of the whole Great Lakes Treaty. We're gonna. There'll be a
moment. There'll be a moment going forward to me that I know we got to get out of here. But the symbolic moment was he goes to the Jimmy Carter funeral. They sit him next to Barack Obama, and the two of them are sitting there having a big laugh fest. I'm going, these are supposedly guys who hate each other. I'm telling you, at some time in the future, you will see Donald Trump sitting beside a Canadian politician, and they'd be laughing it up with him and saying, "Oh, weren't those great times when we were negotiating?" That's the kind of guy he is.
I hope that photo takes place at Donald Trump's funeral, and I hope it's soon.
Well, he can't talk at his own funeral. He can't laugh it up at his funeral.
Shout out to Ridley Funeral Home. Bruce, thanks for this, buddy. We'll book another one because I like you and I like chatting with you. And I will get emails. I will get notes from people that I'm platforming this, whatever they're going to call you.
Open their minds
right-wing
to something
bigot.
Different. And I get to learn things from you, like that you hate Donald Trump.
Oh, this is just in. I don't like Donald Trump.
Not shocked.
And that brings us to the end of our 1,647th show. Go to torontomike.com for all your Toronto Mike needs. Notthepublicbroadcaster.com is where we can read your thoughts.
Yes, sir. And I'm at Doughboy on X and all those places. Please tune in. BruceDowbigginBooks.ca. That's where all my books are.
Buy some Bruce books. He's an excellent writer.
We need the money.
He's been radicalized, but he's still a good writer.
So on the left, is that radical? I thought radical was the left. Anyway, whatever.
Much love to all who made this possible. That's Great Lakes Brewery. You got beer for you there, Bruce. You Palma Pasta. I got a lasagna in my freezer. RecycleMyElectronics.ca. That's where you go if you have old cables, old electronics. You don't throw that in the garbage. You go to RecycleMyElectronics.ca, put in your postal code, and find out where to drop it off.
The shirt.
Yeah, the Muhammad Ali shirt. That's
Ali knocking out Sonny Liston.
Yeah.
And I needed it today because I felt you'd be combative.
Well, I want to see it in the photo we're going to take by Toronto Treat right now. Building Toronto Skyline with Nick Iones. Much love to Nick. And Ridley Funeral Home. This song playing right now is Shadowy Men on a Shadowy Planet, Having an Average Weekend. It's the theme song for Kids in the Hall. And I'll see everybody tomorrow when my special guest is Kid in the Hall, Scott Thompson.
Say hi to Scott.
See you then.